Summer League is over. So let's look at the Southeast Division, the champions of Summer League. The number 1 overall pick, the number 2 overall pick, the best player in fantasy across all of Summer League. It is an absolute cracker, Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I just finished drinking a Diet Mountain Dew. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by the Game Time app. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free and we are available on all platforms. So give it a thumb, give it a bang, give it a double bang, give it a comment, leave it all below. Southeast Division. A lot of interesting fantasy takeaways, a lot of interesting performances throughout all teams in this division, including the overall Summer League champs, which, of course, we'll all forget about in about a week's time, but that's okay. So we're here just to talk about those 5 teams. You know who they are: Atlanta, Charlotte, Miami, Orlando, and the Washington Wizards. Let's start by going, let's go to Atlanta at first. Good place to start off because A, it starts with A, and B, the number 1 overall pick, Zaccharie Risacher, was on this squad. I watched 2 games of the Hawks live and then caught up with as much as I needed to after that. Let's start with Risacher because as the number 1 overall pick, he's going to have a lot of focus on him. Still finalizing my post-Summer League Dynasty ranks. He may move up a little bit. I thought that he did the sort of things that we thought he would do. Still don't maintain that he should be the number 1 overall pick. He was at times passive. There were times where he flashed, but he goes missing a lot. And that's just part of his game. That's why he's an underwhelming number 1 overall pick. So, 91st ranked player for points leagues in Summer League. 25.5 points in 30 minutes is fine. He shot 39 from the field and 25 from 3, which is not fine, but it will improve. He shot 43 from the line, which is ridiculous. He's not that bad. 14 points, 2 threes, 5 rebounds. No steals, 1 block. They are just mid numbers. 22.5 usage is very low for a number 1 overall pick. And these are all the concerns. Will he? I don't even know if he'll start for the Hawks. I guess that he will, meaning DeAndre Hunter comes off the bench, or they go super big and play Risacher at the 2. Now, I saw Risacher outside of Summer League about 5 times. He was in my hotel. And every time I saw him, he was just hanging out with his dad and his mum and one other person. That's the only people he was hanging out with. He is huge. He is very skinny. I don't know if that means anything, but I'm just telling you, I saw him and he's very big. Him playing the 2, I'm not sure will happen. Although, what is a really interesting thing that we saw in Summer League is that the Hawks got Risacher basically to be their point of attack defender. He guarded point guards. And giving away DeJounte Murray means that there's a need for a point of attack defender. You could make an argument that someone like Bogdanovic could start at the 2. You could argue that Vic Krejci could start at the 2. You could argue that Kobe Buffkin could start at the 2. But the way they used Risacher was a little eye-opening just in that defensive perspective. Do they want him to be a 2 who guards 1s and 2s, and then on offense he's more of a 3 and Hunter plays more of the 2 role? I don't know. But I'm not going to rule that out. I think that the way that they used him there was a little eye-opening. If we do get word that Risacher starts, and I think he will, that's totally going to be fine to draft in the last couple of rounds. But there's no real gigantic upside here with him. And I think he's just going to have low usage and low shooting numbers. And nothing that we saw through the Summer League Vegas Spectacular, it changed my mind on that. In terms of the other players on this team, 2nd round selection, Nikola Jurisic threw down a monster dunk. He was playing as a point guard because their point guard was Kobe Buffkin, who I did see at Vegas as well, looked okay, but he's have a shoulder issue, which might cost him a fair bit of time. Jurisic was playing point guard, and then he suffered an injury, which is going to cost him a lot of time. Foot fracture, it might be 3 months, it might be 6, it might be 9. We don't really know. But as a second-round player who hasn't even signed his contract yet, Nikola Jurisic, I don't think is going to have any real impact. I like the dunk that he threw down. I think he's going to be able to be. And interestingly, the player that he might profile best to be is the guy that's currently on his team, Bogdan Bogdanovic. A shooting guard / small forward who can run as a point guard, a tall point guard who... Bogdan's probably a better shooter, but Jurisic is probably a better passer. Be interesting to see how they use him, but he's just not going to play this season because of that foot fracture, or most of this season. They didn't have a huge amount else going on. Mohamed Gay, who barely played as a second-round pick last season due to recurrent back injuries, he was okay. 24 fantasy points, 12 points a game, didn't shoot the ball super well. He looked like as a third-string center, third-string power forward, and they don't really use him as a center, more as a four. Maybe that ends up being okay. Nothing exciting. A guy that did have some impressive moments, and then those moments were so impressive, the Hawks said, yep, we are signing you to a two-way in the middle of Summer League. Basically, we watched the game. I was sitting with Tony East from Locked On Pacers and Jackson Gatlin from Locked On Rockets. We're sitting watching the Hawks-Wizards game together. And we saw this guy playing, Keaton Wallace is his name. Who the hell is this guy? What's going on here? Who's this guy? I vaguely remember him. I think he might have played a game somewhere in the NBA. So we did some furious searching, and we saw that Keaton Wallace had been signed on a two-way by the Clippers and then waived about 3 days later and never got into an NBA game. And then I found out that it's Keaton Wallace's brother. And then, about an hour later, we find out that the Hawks had actually then signed him to a two-way contract. All that's to say that Keaton Wallace is one of the best producers in Summer League. He was the 18th ranked player in -1 rankings and 23rd on Yahoo points leagues. He had 23 usage, so not sky high. He shot the ball well, though. 6 assists, 2.2 steals, and 44% shooting. It's really good. Now, behind Trae Young, their point guard depth is Kobe Buffkin, and last year it was a mixture of Patty Mills. It was Trent Forrest. That Keaton Wallace one is just, for the deep league sickos, which I know are the people who are watching this, just keep a small eye on that. He's been in and around the NBA system for a couple of years, and I thought he produced pretty well. Dylan Windler was also on this team. I mean, that's great and all, but I don't think we need to care that much. He is a really, really strong rebounder. He always has been, but injuries have killed his career so far. He averaged 8 rebounds a game in 28 minutes, and he shot 42% from 3, which honestly, coming out of, I think, Belmont, was the appeal of Windler. Hey, he is a small forward who rebounds like a 4/5, but shoots like a 2. And then he just never stayed healthy. So keep an eye. He was on a 2A for a bit last season with the Hawks. The other guy there was EJ Liddell, who came across in the Murray deal. He averaged only 8 points. He played only 19 minutes as a third-year player who had some really good numbers coming out of Ohio State, but he looks like one of those guys that puts up the numbers in college and that doesn't really 100% translate across to the NBA. So I'm not getting too excited about anything that he's bringing there. Today's episode is brought to you by the Game Time app. Tickets. We love events. We like going to things. Of course we do. But we want an easy process. We don't want to be guessing. What do our seats look like? How much am I paying for this seat? What are the additional fees that are getting chucked on here? Well, Game Time does the thing. It takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They're an official licensed ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball as well. I've just come back from the States going to some baseball games. For one of those games, we got tickets through Game Time. Last minute, I already had some tickets, which weren't through Game Time. But we got over there and my partner's like, I actually want to come. Yeah, okay, now you're a baseball fan, are you? So we'll come. All right, so we needed to get extra tickets. So went on to Game Time, and as you know, closer you get to Game Time, the price of these tickets go down. We went there, looked at the view from our seat, we got the extra tickets, bang, we're in, and we saw the Padres get smacked by the Mariners. But that's beside the point. Game Time helped us out, and Game Time can help you out. So go ahead and take the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA. For $20 off your first purchase, you might be able to be like us and see the big dumper hit a couple of home runs. Terms apply again. Create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets. Lowest price guaranteed. Okay, so that's Atlanta in the books. Let's look at your Charlotte Hornets, who had, you would have thought, or maybe you wouldn't have, but I would have thought there would have been a few more NBA-type players on this roster. There wasn't really, but the guy who was picked number 6 in what was a draft night surprise, Tijan Solin, it was okay. I think the way that we saw Solin get used in Summer League suggests pretty obviously that he is not going to be playing a sizable role for this Hornets team, especially after they signed dermatologist Miles Bridges to that extended contract. So Bridges and Miller are going to be the 4 and the 3, I'm guessing. Who starts at the 2 is probably Josh Green, although it could be Trey Mann, it could be Vasa Micic, but Salan is going to be a backup. And he was basically a backup in Summer League. Now, I did tweet this out watching him in person. And of course, there's always going to be some idiot on Twitter, not including the guy that owns it, because he's obviously the king of the idiots, but someone there's always going to say something. I said, man, Salan, look, he's big, but he looks a bit skinny. Man, what are you talking about? He doesn't look skinny. How can you say? I'm literally here watching him. He looks skinny. He has got a big frame, and he will fill out to be big. But at the moment, he's got very skinny legs, wide shoulders, but skinny body. It is going to take a lot of time here. I liked his hustle. I liked his aggression. He shot 10% from 3. Like, that's obviously not good, and no one's going to argue that it was. His rebounding at the moment, I'd say, was his biggest strength, 9 and 7. But, 1 assist through all of his games and no steals, no blocks. All those numbers are obviously very disappointing. So I don't even see how there's any way that we can look at Salan and go, yeah, this is even a flyer type. It's going to take multiple injuries, and even then, if he played, I don't think he's going to produce. He's young. He's just turning 19 around this time. It's going to be 2 years, maybe, to get into this spot. And I think long-term, he's going to be a small ball 5. Look, honestly, it's an easy comparison. Big, lanky guy coming from Europe who maybe can fill out Giannis, right? That's the easy comparison. But when you look at his body only, and Giannis put in a ton of work to get as big as he has, Salan has got the frame to do that. And that's when I'm not saying he's going to be Giannis, doesn't have the passing ability that Giannis has, none of that stuff. I had a lot of concerns with Salan coming out of the draft. But in terms of the way that the body could transform, I could see that. He has got the frame to put that size on. And then that means that he plays like Giannis does, more of a start off as a 4. Giannis played a little bit of 3, honestly some 2 when he was young, but the NBA is different now. He'll play more as a 4, maybe a bit of the 3, but as he gets older into his career, Salan will play more at the 4/5, the exact way that Giannis does. To what level? Well, that does still remain to be seen, and I'm going to go ahead and guess that it's probably not to the same level that the big fella, the 2-time MVP, Giannis Antetokounmpo, plays at. That's just a guess from me. A guess. Educated guess, but a guess nonetheless. Who else on this team is worth us talking about? Well, there's not a huge amount. Leaky Black, the other Mr. Black, played on this squad. He can rebound, I guess. 21 minutes for 4 rebounds. Cool. 3 points. Steals are okay. He's a pretty good defender, but he's an older player. He's 25 now. He's on a 2-way again. Not sure that he lasts on that. Brandon Miller, for some reason, played 1 game. He was working on a horrible game in the first half of that game. He was on track for a Thonmaker triple-double, and that's the 10 points, 10 fouls, 10 rebounds. In the end, he got it together, and he ended up with 23 points on 44% shooting. He had 8 rebounds, but he had 7 turnovers in that game, and no defensive stats. I remain, and for everyone who loves to put things in complete black and white, I'm a hater. That's because I don't think he's going to be Paul George. I think I'm branded as a Brandon Miller hater. I think that he can be a solid player. I always said I think Chris Middleton is a good comp for him, best case scenario. I thought he had some solid moments last season. I also think that some of his production late season was significantly overrated. And it's going to be a little bit of a different scenario on this team now if LaMelo Ball is actually there and healthy all season. Because people go, I'll get rid of Ball and turn the team over to Miller. I don't agree with that. I think Miller can be a really strong number 2. I also think that there are still a lot of holes in the overall fantasy game. I want to see him get a lot of threes up. I want to see him be a 20-point scorer this season. I think it's possible. And I want to see him establish himself as the number 2 over Miles Bridges. And he was shaky early on. He was good in the second half. I don't know that there was any point for him being at Summer League, but whatever. He was there. Last season, watching Summer League, Nick Smith Jr. looked terrible. He was like, what is this guy? Top 5 high school recruit and can't do a thing. In the NBA, he had some struggles, obviously. This season, he looked better. And I'm not going to say that he shot well because he shot 26 from 3 and 30% from the field. If you haven't got the point of this through 3 of these shows already, no one shoots well in Summer League. It's a terrible environment for shooting. But Smith just looked a little bit better. 3 assists, 5 rebounds, 11 points, 2 threes, 26 usage. He looked more comfortable with the ball in his hands. His shot creation was better. Didn't go in, very obviously, but he looked better. And he looked like a guy that even though there is the ball, there is Green, there is Micic, there is old mate Trey Mann, Yeah, if someone goes down and Smith has to play a 15-minute a night role, I'm not going to be like, well, that is charity minutes and he doesn't deserve it. He'll be like, okay, maybe we push into a larger role here. I can see a significant improvement from Nick Smith this season, still only to be a third-string guard, but at least an improvement over what was one of the worst players in the entirety of the NBA last season. And I don't really think that that's gigantic exaggeration at all. Let's go now to your Summer League champs. Jimmy Butler could never. The Miami Heat. They get themselves a championship on the back of some interesting performances from a number of interesting players, but who do you think I'm going to look at here as the guy that I'm going to put the big spotlight on? Because it might not be the best player in Summer League, who didn't win the MVP, by the way. It's going to be the guy that I think there's a little bit more intrigue over, and that is the big fella, literally the big fella, Superman, Kel'El Ware, who dominated. I had Ware 11 or 12 on my board. He ends up going at 15, and when I go to redo it, I think I'll put him higher. He looked awesome. And he did the things that we talked about, best case scenario. Super athletic, unbelievable athlete, rebounder, shot blocker, rim protector, scorer. He was ridiculous. 18 and 8 he averaged in Summer League. Sorry, not 18 and 8, 17 and 8. Why is that? Yeah, 18, 17.9, my guy. Josh, get it right. He had 27 usage, which is really high and not going to hold. He was the 17th ranked player for -1 and 14th on Yahoo. He played 26 minutes a night. He blocked 2 shots a game. He only shot 21% from 3, but he was a dominant force. The question is, and the very easy thing is, hey, what if they just play Bam at the 4 and Ware at the 5? I think that's possible, and I think it is possible, but I think a lot of us, including me at times, forget that Little Chungus Nikola Jovic established himself as the starting power forward. Was he good? I would say he was better and sort of intermediate. Is he a guy that you go, well, we've got our power forward position sorted because Jovic is there, don't worry about anything else? Absolutely not. We don't view it that way because he's not that guy. But I think there will be some opportunities here. Like the backup center is Tom Bryant, who's terrible. Ware should be able to play immediately as at least the backup behind Bam and play maybe 2 to 3 minutes next to Adebayo. Because their power forwards, it's almost 100% going to be Jovic, I'm guessing, at the 4. You got Haywood Highsmith, who will play a little bit at the 4. Then they go and play Butler at the 4. And Jaquez can't really play the 4, but at times he'll get an opportunity there. But they lost Caleb Martin. So in terms of like drafting a guy in fantasy, I can see Ware being a late round pick, but like, could he get the 23 minutes that Derek Lively got last season to be a fantasy option? Maybe. But the difference is Lively was able to be like 67% shooting and higher blocks and higher rebounds. I'm not quite sure where it gets there, but he's on our radar. He was super impressive. I didn't hear one person say a bad thing about what they saw from Kel'El Ware through Summer League. Pele Larson was on this team. He was a second-round pick who I did not like necessarily as a prospect. He didn't really do a huge amount to sway me. The 3 assists in 21 minutes is okay. He shot the ball, like, what did he shoot? 44 from the field and 36 from 3, like, totally reasonable. He could develop into a rotation wing player, maybe. I'm not super into it. The guy who did actually put up dominating numbers is Jaime Jaquez, who was the number 1 rated player for category leagues in Summer League. He was number 2 in points leagues. He averaged 41 points a game. 26, 8, and 3.5 with 1.5 steals is great. He ramped his usage to 34. He shot 43 from 3. He was amazing. He was the guy in Summer League that people thought that he was last season when people were claiming that he was a top 3 pick in the redraft. He was great in this scenario, and that is literally exactly what you want from a player in year 2 who played significant rotation minutes. Come out, kill him. He played 2 games, he dominated. I still don't really know where it all fits on this Heat team. Hero, Jimmy, Rozier, Duncan Robinson's still around, Jovic at the 4. I'm going to guess that Jaquez is at worst the 6th man. He will start half the games, maybe more than that, and maybe he plays 29 minutes a night. And the encouraging thing here is, again, is good shooting. Now, he had really good shooting last season and then fell away back to UCLA, Jaime Jaquez. But he did exactly what we wanted him to do. And I can see him being a draftable player. As much as I still don't think that there is any star upside in him, he did what he needed to do, and he looked great in those 2 games he played. The guy who was the most impressive, no, I'm biased because Kel'El Ware was obviously impressive, I think was Keshad Johnson. A 2-way guy who just, when he was on the court, he looked great. Now, he was only 78th in points league rankings. He averaged 26 points a game, 11 and 5 with 1 block and 1.5 steals, 17 usage. He shot 39% from 3, but he was aggressive. He attacked the rim. He's an undrafted 2-way rookie, and he looked like he was like a second-year player. And saying that for Summer League is a huge, huge level of praise. Could he be the next guy, the next Heat player who is able to step up through their development system and become a rotation guy, a Max Strus, a Duncan Robinson, a Gabe Vincent? I wouldn't rule that out. I wasn't enamored with Johnson coming out of Arizona and the stats that he put up, but I thought he looked really good on the court. Their other two-way player, Zion Pullen, not quite as impressive. 2 assists in 14 minutes a game. He did shoot like 75% from three, obviously very limited attempts. A little bit of a longer way to come there, but when we're talking about their ability to develop guards, they've had some success in doing that. I thought the guy that was on a two-way for the Heat, but isn't anymore, and threw down one of the biggest dunks you will ever see, Alondes Williams played a little bit better than Zion Pullen, and I hope someone tries to give Alondes another shot at things. I think he could be a useful NBA rotation player. Josh Christopher is not currently on an NBA team. Remember he was drafted by the Rockets. He never really got a chance there. He was traded to the Grizzlies in the 25-team Dylan Brooks, Patty Mills deals, and then he was waived by them. He ended up in Utah at some point, and now he's landed on the Heat Summer League team. He was the Summer League final MVP, Josh Christopher. He averaged 16 points. He shot 50 from the field. He shot 49 from three. He averaged 2 steals, and he was one of the guys that, coming out of college, had some really very good fantasy translation numbers, but never an opportunity to play in the NBA. It's, we're, 3 years in now? Or this is year 3 for Christopher, heading into this season. And, I would hope that he would have done enough to be able to find a significant role. But sometimes the maturity thing can be the problem. So we just keep an eye on him. We see if he ends up, like, say, Brooklyn, says, hey, come, we've got a roster spot, we've got a two-way, come and stay with us. If Charlotte, probably not Detroit, there's a little bit of weirdness around their two-guard position, but if a bad team gives him an opportunity, I think I'm not going to rule him out. The other guy who is currently on their roster, Exhibit 10 guy, is Isaiah Stevens. Yeah, cool. He averaged 8 points. He averaged 7 assists per game. He shot 63%. I'm not really sure that there's a lot there that is going to get us excited long term, though. We've got 2 more teams to get through in the Southeast Division. And these 2 teams had a ton that was going on, fantasy-wise. So let's talk about your Orlando Magic, because they were rolling out some rotations that had a lot of NBA players. And let's talk, now I'm going to warn you guys, just make sure you've taken the proper precautions, the proper protection, because looking at this image, you will probably get pregnant. You will get pregnant. Prepared? Cool. Because Tristan da Silva is one of the more handsome men in the NBA. I was not a very high backer of da Silva in the draft. I think he is a fine 23-year-old wing who did 23-year-old wing things in Summer League, who will not get huge minutes in the NBA this season and will just be a meh sort of producer. And at the moment, I guess you could say he could take some of the Joe Ingles role and play 15 minutes a night, and long-term he's a 21, 22-minute a night player. I think that is all reasonable. But I also just don't see a level of upside. I think a lot of the production from him came as a middling old college player. That's the negatives out of the way for Aravinda here. The positives is he was great. Like, he was awesome. 18 points a game on only 19 usage. The key thing, though, he hit 3.3 threes, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 1.3 steals. They're all very much in line with what he did at Colorado. Just the real sub-Rudy Gay. Now, you're going to be sub and Gay and Tristan da Silva in the one sentence. You can think whatever you want about that. But Rudy Gay was the guy that I always going to go to, of the guy that hits. He's Tobias Harris, but Rudy Gay's funnier. That would just go, I'm going to be average in every category plus 10%. Averages 17 points, I'll average 18.5. Averages 1.7 threes, I'll average 2.2. Averages 5 rebounds, I'll average 6.5. Averages 3 assists, I'll go to 3.4. Averages a steal, I'll go to 1.2. 0.5 blocks is the average, I'll do 0.6. That's what Gay was. And I think da Silva can be just the average. The 17 and 2 and 4.5 and 2.8 and 1 steal, like right across the board. His numbers here: 14th best player in Summer League, category leagues, 36th in points leagues, 31 points, 27 minutes. They're all encouraging. He shot 59% from 3. So if you've been a fan of this show, fan sounds stupid. if you've been a viewer, consumer of watching me talk or listen to me talk or take on any of the ideals that I talk about, your immediate thing should be, yeah, like this is fake. It's just not real. He will shoot 20 percentage points less than this from 3. Therefore, his scoring goes down, his field goals go down, his threes go down, and then instead of being a 17.7 point per game player, he's 14, 5, and 3 with 2 threes a game. In 27 minutes at Summer League as a 23-year-old, and you go, that's very, very mid. But again, we contrast it to how poorly everyone else shot in Summer League, and it looks awesome. And that's great. But he's not taking minutes from Wagner. He's not taking minutes from Banchero. He's not taking minutes from KCP. He's even taking minutes from like Jet Howard. Who knows? It might be a time in a Dynasty League to see if someone wants to overrate Tristan da Silva. But again, remember where anyone you talk to or get information from or read or listen or watch, remember their biases. And I'll be very clear about my biases, and I will always look and adjust and make moves. I won't do it like that. I won't do snap judgments, but I did not think Da Silva was a first-round player. I think he's got a solid floor with very low upside. And that might change, but that's where I view him at the moment. Always remember that. And you can disagree with that, and that is cool, because you know what? You don't know anything, and neither do I, because we don't know how it will play out. We can have ideas, we can have opinions, but we don't know. Nobody knows. You can't say, well, he will be this. No, we can't say that. He will learn to shoot. You can't say that. He will become a good defender. Can't say that. We don't know. We have ideas, but we cannot just put best case scenario development onto every player and worst case scenario stagnation on the players we don't like. Really key portion of evaluation, I think. The rest of this team. I think that Jay Huff is an NBA player. He sort of bounced around a bit. I think Lakers, Nuggets, Rockets. He played for the Magic here. Every time I watch him, I go, this guy's all right. And he was all right again. Just a name to watch in case. He's not on the roster. I think he should find somewhere on the roster, but he could also just be one of these guys who gets lost in the shuffle. But he averaged 17 and 5 in 26 minutes. 2 blocks, 62% shooting, 78 from the line. That's an actual fantasy stud. Everything is in place, and he's always been that guy. The problem is he's 27, but he's always been that guy with elite skill set production. Let's talk about their 2 lottery picks from last season, though. The big fella, Jet Howard, who was I thought, really bad pick at the time, somehow underperformed that slot last season by a huge amount, or underperformed my expectations last season by a huge amount. Came in here, had 19 points a game, 3 threes, shot 50%, was 102nd in -1 rankings, but had 27 usage and shot 47% from 3. And then they went and signed KCP and Gary Harris over him again. There is no clear path for Jet Howard being a rotation player this season. And while there are some interesting flashes, and I like the fact that he was able to hit these threes at a higher amount, and he was able to get some assists, but there's no defensive stats, and he subsisted here on getting a bunch of usage, which is just not a realistic scenario with Paolo, with Franz, with Cole Anthony, with Suggs, with KCP, with any of these guys. But it was better than being terrible. He had some moments, but there's no clear path there at the moment. And I would say that's almost the same for Mr. Black. Anthony Black, 78th ranked player, 60th in Yahoo leagues. He started a bunch of games, or in Yahoo points leagues. He started a bunch of games last season and was quite poor. He can be, I think, an impactful defender. He can be a solid passer, but I think the offense is still just not where it needs to be. He shot 50% from the field, but 25% from 3. He averaged 12 points. He averaged 4.5 assists and 2.5 steals. He is going to get steals. He could be a solid passer. But at the moment, it's him and Cole Anthony battling for the backup role, or Corey Joseph as well for some reason, battling for the backup role behind Jalen Suggs. I was, again, context, I was always out on Black. I had Cason Wallace ahead of him. I had Black at about 14 in that draft. I just worried that the shooting was never going to be there, and so far that is the case. Low usage, bad shooter. Assist and steal, sure. Shout out Alfred Payton, who I did like at the time, but I've changed my sort of opinion on how those guys work in the NBA. So Black was good. He's a second-year, number 6 overall pick, and those numbers are fine, but they're not. Contrast that to where Jaime Jaquez was as a second-round dominating player. Absolutely not the same thing here. And that's, to me, a little bit of a worry. The last team, the number 2 overall pick, played here. He wasn't even the best player on that team. Not even close. But we are going to highlight the performance of Alex Sarr because there's intrigue. He's the number 2 overall pick. And it's very easy for me to laugh that he had an 0-15 game. We could all do it. I had him number 1 on my board. And I'm almost certain that I will have him number 1 on my board. Maybe he'll go to 2. But I'm not moving him down that much. 5.5 points is putrid. He shot 11% from 3, 12% actually, 19% from the field, 50% from the line. They're all disgusting numbers. They are terrible numbers. He was taking ill-advised shots, which worries me more than them not going in. But was that because A, he's like, I'm actually a wing, guys, I'm not a center, or it was the coaching staff going, hey, let's see, man, because we're going to play Valanciunas at center. We want you to play as a 3/4 alongside Kuzma. Show us what you've got. And they would have watched it and went, maybe not. Right? All these, we don't know how any of this stuff works. We don't know how, unless the coach comes out and says it. We don't know that that's the way that they prioritize things. But he never got to the line. He couldn't hit shots. I wouldn't say the shot looked broken. It just didn't go in. We also have to remember, 5.5 points is terrible. 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 2.5 blocks is great. And despite all of these struggles, he was 88th in -1 rankings and 71st on Yahoo points, averaging 27 points a game. He played 30 minutes a night. He was not drafted to be an offensive guy. He was drafted to be an impactful, rim-protecting, switching defender who's got some passing ability with some perhaps offensive ability. Never to be a number 1 player, never to be a high usage player. Again, it's part of the reason why... part of the reason why I and many others did not like this draft class is that game-changing sort of offensive guy, the hub sort of player, doesn't exist. And the top 2 players are these middling usage players with different strengths that don't really profile as a star guy. Defensively, I thought Sarr was really good. He rebounded solidly. The offensive rebounds were pretty good. He did the things that I wanted him to do on that end. And there is zero chance that he will shoot at this level. Zero. We talk about Tristan da Silva coming from 59% down. Well, those percentage points on those shots, just add them onto Sarr. And instead of 5.5 points a game, he's at 12 and 8, 2.5 blocks, 3 assists. And you go, you know what? Actually, he's pretty good. I will happily take a flyer on him towards the end of a fantasy draft. Again, still having no understanding of what the hell the Wizards are going to do in terms of where the rotation goes, because Kuzma, Kispert, Bilal, Vooch, Bagley, so many guys filling these positions at the 1, 2, and the 3. But overall, some disappointments, some things to laugh at with Alex Sarr, but some positives as well. The rest of this team, let's talk about, I know I don't really want to, but let's talk about John Davis, who is in year 3 as a top 10 pick. It was a disaster pick at the time. It looks worse now. If I was them, I'd just be declining the 4th-year option. Nothing that he did as a 3rd-year top 10 pick in summer leagues suggests to me that he's figured it out. Now, we averaged 13-6, which is fine. A steal and a block, which is all right. He shot 40% from 3. Like, these are all pretty good numbers. But I don't care. Like, he still had the mistakes that you would think that you shouldn't. He should be playing one game, scoring 26 and go, all right, I'm ready for the NBA. And he played these games and these minutes made me go, all right, maybe you can not play in the G League this season. That's the best case that I would say for John. The massive positive was the big fella, Bubbles Carrington. Now, I had Bub, I think, at 6 on my final board, and I feel pretty good about it. I don't know if he's going to start on this team. Malcolm Brogdon's there, Jordan Poole plays point guard. How they run their rotation, I've got no idea. But Carrington is going to get chances, and if they just say, right, here's our starter opening night, we will probably consider drafting him, especially in points leagues. Now, in category leagues, we know the experience. We know the Scoot Henderson. We know the Keontae George. We know he will probably have some rough nights where he'll average 14 points on 39% shooting with 6.5 assists and 1.2 steals, and you've got to be able to balance all of that. But Carrington was the best player on the court most games that he played. He was the 13th ranked player in -1, 16th in points leagues. He averaged 16 points with 7.5 boards and 5 assists and a steal and 0.6 blocks. He also shot 36% from 3. Now, his 2-point finishing was terrible. He was at 33% overall. But he did this not on 30% usage, on 23% usage. His turnover number was incredibly low. These are all massively encouraging signs. And part of the issue with Bub and why some of his fantasy translations weren't awesome is that he just didn't generate any real defensive stats at Pittsburgh, and his percentages were a little bit off. Well, here he shot 86 from the line and 36 from 3, and he got a steal and 0.6 blocks. Now, this is obviously limited in terms of how much exposure. He played 5 games in 33 minutes. He just turned 19. But if this trend continues, well, then we are talking about a future top 60, top 50 fantasy guy. And he will definitely move up my dynasty rank list. Definitely will. Keyshawn George, I didn't love the pick. I didn't love trading into the first round for him, but he did the thing that he needed to do. Be a tall, spot-up shooter. Did it. I still liked someone like a John Furphy in that role more than what George is, but 9 points, 2 threes. Shot 48% from 3. Cool. That is a viable role. I think he's going to be probably a better player than Corey Kispert, even though I don't love George and I don't like Kispert either. But George is young. He's tall. What did he average? Like 78 from the line? But the problem here is, again, like 2 assists, 4 rebounds, 0.8 steals. There's nothing else. 18 usage, but he played his NBA role. Because Alex Sarr, Bub Carrington, John Davis, these guys are all playing here. So George did the thing. He spotted up. He knocked down shots. Great. Limited fantasy appeal. Could he turn into best case? What's the best case for Keyshawn? Tall Kentavious Caldwell-Pope? That's best case. Probably not the defender that KCP is. Justin Champagny, Little Bubbles, was on this team. He did his thing, 1.3 steals, 1.3 blocks. That's what the Champagnes do. He's on a 2-way still. Not sure there's a real role here for him, unfortunately. Pat Baldwin Jr. I'm out on. He had a tantalizing skill set. 6'11", shoots threes, blocks shots, doesn't shoot it well enough, and does nothing else good at all. I'm out. While Tristan Vukcevic, who will get converted, I think, to a full-time contract later this season, he's on a 2-way now. He only played 1 game, so I'm not going to judge much of that, but I just wanted to mention that he only played the 1 game. He is not going to be an impact guy this season, but he is somebody, I think, Vukcevic, who will profile at least into a 21, 22-minute-a-night player at some point through his career. And that is the end of the Southeast Division for Summer League. So, who was your best player that you saw through this division? Was it Bub? Was it Alex Sarr? No. Was it De Silva, Jaquez, Ware, Risacher? Wasn't Salan? Let me know. And while you're doing that, leave that comment down below, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.